So lesson 3 is you are now ready to draft your document. So you already have section outlines, and that's going to help navigate your writing or guide you through your writing. Now you're going to develop useful lists, charts, and visuals. Now you're going to create an introduction and a summary and key sentences that express your most important message. Okay? Also, here there's an activity in the workbook called a $1 Million Procedure that you can take a look at. So, first thing, follow your section outlines to begin writing. Identify the most effective way to present specific information. You may want to use lists. We are a big proponent of lists here at Write It Well. I'm going to show you some guidelines. But whatever you do, watch the sentence and paragraph length, especially if you're working with technical information. Okay, so if you're sharing dense technical information, find the easiest way or the most appetizing way to chunk out that information. It's probably with short sentences, short paragraphs, or lists, but research shows that long sentences and long paragraphs are the most difficult way to present information to your reader. So this, if you've decided that a list is the best way to present information, you may start with an introduction, a summary statement to your list. So here we've done exactly that. We have done extensive research on 3 kinds of workstations. Each workstation is easy to assemble, has a wide variety of components, and can be available by the time we need it. Here is the station's availability for 3 collections. Okay, so here is the information presented in list form. Make sure you maintain the flow of all of your ideas. So identify an important word in the last sentence of one paragraph. Repeat that word in the first sentence of the next paragraph. Consider revising the part of speech, maybe changing a verb to a noun. So here are 2 paragraphs that illustrate that technique. The evaluation committee chair will usually communicate this information while the full committee is in session. It may not be appropriate for this communication to occur during a formal session. In these cases, and then it goes on. So again, while you're starting to draft your report or proposal, you want to make sure that the ideas are flowing through. And here's a technique to help you with that. Again, watch sentence and paragraph length. Sentences should be about 20 to 25 words long, and they should focus on one point. Keep paragraphs to a maximum of 5 to 7 lines. Usually that's 2 or 3 sentences. If you find that your paragraph has become longer, shorter paragraphs will help. You can break them up. A single sentence can, in fact, be a paragraph. So here's an example. This one is 59 words. It also has lots of numbers in it. If you're using, again, technical information or anything that has a lot of numbers, you want to break it out into ways that a reader can pretty easily skim or scan through the information and digest it. Here's a revision, at least with shorter sentences. Again, we've used 25 words instead of 59, 25, 21, and 6. Okay, so this accident rate is not acceptable. That's the last sentence. It's short, succinct, to the point. So in today's cluttered, over-communicated work environment, we're looking for lots of visuals that will help us understand information. So what we want to focus on in this section is developing useful lists, tables, charts, and visuals. The one thing you don't want to do is insert any kind of graphic that confuses your reader or seems somehow superfluous. It can take a lot of time to develop these visual aids, so make sure that they're useful. They're actually easy to follow and will help. So one way you can use visuals if you want to embed more in a report that has a lot of words is to use lists and charts. So use charts to make comparisons. Make sure lists are easy to follow. Again, you're looking for ways to break up the text to add visual appeal. Here are the guidelines for using lists. The first one is to introduce the list with an introductory statement. Second is to make sure that all items belong on the list. Third, to be consistent with capitalization, sentence structure, and end punctuation. Fourth, you want to keep items in parallel form. And the fifth is to organize the list for your reader. So follow those 5 guidelines when you're using a list. Remember, you've created a theme as your sentence, as your introductory statement, and then you have different topics hanging on that. So in a little bit more detail, remember that an introduction will help you present your list to your reader. Your summary statement, again, can serve as the introduction to your list. Make sure all items belong. Even today, with sophisticated writers, sometimes elements will enter a list that don't belong there. So make sure everything should be hanging off of the same introductory statement or introduction. Remember too that all list items should start with a capital letter. You can see this one is inconsistent. It doesn't start with all capital letters, and it's very distracting. This we consider to be low-hanging fruit. You can make your lists look much more polished by following these guidelines. So again, this one is that end capitalization should be consistent. If you use a period at the end of one of your bullet point items, you must use a bullet point on every bulleted item. Or if you choose to use fragments, you can use fragments. The only place where your decision making is not left to you is when there is a full sentence followed by more information, or a second sentence, like there is in this first bullet point. In that case, you must use end punctuation throughout. Here's a revised example. We've taken the end punctuation out of the first bullet. We've capitalized the first letter of each of the bullets, and we've chosen to make them all fragments. So again, no end punctuation. So the concept of parallel form is very important in narrative and in lists. So make sure that if you're presenting 3 items, again in narrative form, that the items that you've included in your sentence follow the same parallel form, and especially in lists, because your reader is skimming down to see the first letter, the first words of all of those bullet points, and you want them to be consistent. So in the first one, we have discussion, weather, and then early retirement. So by making them parallel, your reader is going quickly through the list: discuss, decide, and draft. And lastly, we want to make sure that all of our items are organized, so they all belong in the list. That means that if your list is more than 5 to 7 items long, you want to take the time to organize into smaller lists. So that means that this list is a little long. You have an opportunity to create 3 shorter lists. Your reader will appreciate that. So as you're creating reports and proposals, maybe your report is a summary of all of your findings. Your proposal is either internal or external in your organization. You're finding places where you can present information in list form following these basic guidelines. You also want to cleanly outline a table of contents. So guidelines for presenting a table of contents also apply. The most important thing you want to keep in mind is that if you have a sub-item, so for example, under 3 roles here, there's only 1 item hanging here. We see that often, but really you want to make sure that at least 2 items are hanging underneath one of your table of contents items, the main headings on the left. So there should be at least 2 to substantiate a sub-bullet in a table of contents. Okay, so think through how you present the table of contents, lists, and other techniques to readers. Again, remember to use lists, numbered lists, for a series of steps that are chronological or sequential. And when there's no particular order, you can go ahead and use bulleted items. So again, looking to add visual appeal to your report or proposal, or maybe even your procedure, think about combining tables with lists. Here's a single dense paragraph. How can we add a table that would help our reader grasp our concept? So we might want to revise that, and now this project has 3 distinct stages. Okay, so now we've created a visual so that the reader can see quickly that this is a staging document. I would certainly appreciate the revision as opposed to the long narrative where I might actually have to take notes on the side to figure out which dates correspond with which activities. So do the hard work for your reader so that they can use your document as the tool that they'll use to go forward. Maybe use tables, again, to make comparisons. Okay, a long, dense paragraph certainly could benefit by a table here. Here are the consequences and the rankings. All of that was presented in narrative form. I'm sure that you would agree that it's much more attractive with a short paragraph at the beginning followed by a table that shows you what's happening with the data points. Now we can also use different kinds of visual elements to add value. There's lots of tools on your computer and in various sites that will help you create visual elements. The rule to live by is to make sure that those visual elements actually add value, that they help your reader understand your concept, whether it's a simple or complex one. So make sure you've labeled it and explained your visual so that you don't find people struggling over what kind of value your visual element is adding to your report or proposal. At this point, you're ready to draft an introduction. Okay, so most important point here is to write the introduction after you write the rest of the report. Okay, so keep it brief, 1.5 pages or less. Most people will say today that an entire document should be 1 page long. That may or may not be possible with, again, a multi-section report or proposal, but at least your summary should be brief, okay? So explain early why the issue is important or why the reader should care. Describe the situation and the report's focus and define key issues and terms. End the introduction by outlining what each section of your report or proposal will cover. So again, here's an introduction followed by reasons for this project. So that's a helpful visually. We're already engaged. There's some spaces in between the bullet points and in between the sections. We can gain confidence that this reader is going to show us clearly and succinctly what happens next. So we may then go into another section here, sources of funding, and then the project plan, which is going to be conducted in 3 stages. Then we can skim down and find out more about the participants. And then we're ready to draft a document summary. Okay, so a summary also should be less than 2 pages. And you want to remember that readers may use the summary to decide whether to read the entire document. Okay, so remember that some readers will read only the summary, and you want to describe the topic and key takeaways, and so try to write the summary after completing the document and its conclusion. So the summary is what you know that they will read, or can certainly hope that they will read if they read nothing else, unlike the introduction, which is the introduction to your entire document. So again, a proposal summary may give the entire detail that the reader absolutely needs, followed by a much more detailed information that comes later. So at this one, we have during phase 1, and then at the end of phase 1, and then depending on how quickly people respond, and so on. So a nicely written summary with a nice heading there, and then hopefully our reader is engaged and then continues on. So a key motivator for continuing to read will be the key sentences that express your most important messages. As I've said many times, your reader is skimming and scanning through your documents, looking for the most important point. And so you want to compose key sentences that express them. So instead of having readers read through every paragraph, at least they've gotten the main point from those key sentences. So it will introduce the paragraph's central topic. It will provide context to help readers follow your point, and also indicates which points are most important. If you write very compelling key sentences, it will make your job even easier to go back and write that summary. You'll be able to essentially pull all your key sentences together, and you'll have, again, the framework. So the framework can scale up or can scale back out, but it's the skeleton that holds your entire document together. There's an activity on page 70 in the downloadable workbook. It's called $1 million procedure. And for many of you who write procedures at work, this is also a great way to practice writing a procedure that will hopefully get the results that you're looking for.